As he shook hands with Tyler Mason, Director Hamilton said, "Women just don't think strategically. That's why we need leaders like you to drive our merchandising initiatives." I sat there in awe as I watched my male coworker take pride in presenting my merchandising strategy as his own, the same strategy that had increased our regional sales by 20% over the previous quarter. My face burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief after spending months developing, analyzing, and testing in 3 different markets. Nevertheless, I forced myself to keep a professional smile on my face. My name is Simone Briggs, and I am 31 years old. I have been employed for the past 4 years as a merchandising analyst for Gravora Group, one of the biggest retail chains in the Southeast, and I received an honors degree in business analytics, and I've always taken pride in my ability to identify market trends before they blow up. The walls of my cubicle were covered in charts, graphs, and consumer data that most people would find mind-numbingly boring, but to me, they told stories of growth and opportunity. I couldn't help but notice the irony that I was sitting in a Birmingham, Alabama conference room watching my career goals fall apart, while Tyler got a promotion that, when our department head asked for volunteers to develop a new merchandising approach for the upcoming holiday season, I jumped at the chance because I knew it was my chance to demonstrate that I was ready for the senior analyst position that had been hanging in the air. The presentation he just gave was perfect because I had written every single slide, analyzed every data point, and created every recommendation of me for months. 3 weeks ago, Tyler asked if he could work with me on the project. I assumed he was sincere about wanting to learn from my research techniques, so I gave him access to all of my materials, including my pricing strategies, competitor analysis, consumer surveys, and presentation template. He claimed he wanted to comprehend my methodology so he could make a significant contribution to the project, and I was foolish enough to believe him. The way my ideas somehow became team efforts when they succeeded but remained solely mine when they needed refinement. The way my contributions were praised in private but rarely acknowledged, and the fact that Director Hamilton announced Tyler's immediate promotion to Senior Merchandising Manager made me feel cold inside. They weren't just about a stolen presentation or a missed promotion. Growing up in a small town outside of Mobile, I knew early on that intelligence and hard work would be my keys to success. I recognized in public forums how promising projects were inexplicably transferred to male colleagues when they demonstrated genuine potential. The meeting ended with heartfelt congratulations for Tyler, and I knew that speaking up now would only make me look like a sore loser. My relationship with Tyler had always been complicated. When he joined our team 18 months ago, I was tasked with helping him get used to our systems and procedures. My mother repeatedly reminded me that I would need to work twice as hard as men to get half the recognition. I thought she was being overly pessimistic, but as I sat in that conference room, I realized she had been preparing me for this exact moment. My father worked 2 jobs to pay for my college education. I respected his educational background and assumed we would make good colleagues because he was charming, well-connected through his fraternity network, and had an MBA from a prestigious university that opened doors that mine apparently couldn't. He frequently asked insightful questions about my work, and I appreciated having someone who seemed genuinely interested in the analytical side of retail. Looking back on the holiday merchandising strategy, I saw that the questions weren't based on curiosity but rather on intelligence-gathering missions. Tyler had been methodically learning my techniques, comprehending my sources, and positioning himself to take advantage of my knowledge. The partnership he suggested wasn't collaboration. Rather, it was theft with extra. Tyler began setting up one-on-one meetings with Director Hamilton in the weeks before the presentation, ostensibly to discuss our department's strategic vision. He also started going to industry conferences, which I had suggested he attend, but somehow never got permission to do. Finally, he began using phrases, and the most telling indication was the way he conducted our planning session. Rather than offering original ideas, he would ask me to elaborate on mine, forcing me to explain every detail of my reasoning. He recorded our meetings, claiming he wanted to review the strategies later to make sure he understood the nuances. I thought he was being thorough. He also incorporated terminology that I had coined in my reports into casual conversations, as if they were his own insights. 3 days prior to the presentation, Tyler had asked if he could lead the delivery of our findings to the executive team. He claimed that his presentation skills were stronger, and that we would have a better impression with him as the spokesperson. I agreed, but insisted that he acknowledge my role in creating the core strategy. He promised that my contributions would be clearly. When Director Hamilton asked about the analytical methodology, Tyler skillfully explained concepts that I had spent years mastering. When he was asked about market research, he cited surveys that I had designed and conducted. The only time my name was mentioned was when he said that I had provided valuable data support for his strategic vision as the meeting came to an end. Instead, I watched him present my work as his own breakthrough thinking, and people flocked to congratulate Tyler on his outstanding work. I felt a change in myself that I had never known before, and the betrayal struck me like a physical blow as I sat in my car in the Gravora Group parking lot, trying to comprehend what had just transpired. My hands were shaking, and I rewatched Tyler's presentation, noting each time he claimed credit for my work. The pricing optimization model I created from scratch was now his strategic value framework, and the specific terminology I created to describe our target demographics rolled off his tongue as if he had invented it. The customer segmentation analysis I had developed over months of research became his innovative customer profiling system, and the promotion Tyler received wasn't just any promotion. It was the exact position I had been. The position of senior merchandising manager, which I had been working toward for years, came with a $30,000 pay raise, stock options, and leadership over a group of 12 analysts. More significantly, though, it was the entry point to the executive track at Gravora Group, where Tyler would now supervise the execution of my plan and claim credit for its accomplishments. I took out my phone and, 3 months ago, I would have written off the idea of leaving Gravora Group after scrolling through the messages I had received during the meeting from my college roommate Jasmine about a job opening at Sunville Studios, a rapidly expanding retail chain that was making waves in the industry. However, as I sat in that parking lot, I realized that I had nothing left to lose. And the following morning, I arrived at work early and discovered Tyler already in his new corner. During our departmental meeting that afternoon, Director Hamilton described Tyler's new responsibilities and commended his strategic thinking. He was talking loudly on the phone about his merchandising breakthrough when he caught my eye through the glass wall and gave me the thumbs up, as if we were sharing some inside joke. The casualness of his gesture made my blood boil. He actually seemed to believe that I would be happy to see him succeed with my work. Hamilton then turned to me and said, "Simone, I know you're disappointed not to get the promotion, but I hope you'll support Tyler in his new role. Your data analysis skills will be valuable to his business." He also mentioned that Tyler would be presenting our holiday merchandising plan to the board of directors next month. This presentation would essentially be my work being showcased at the highest levels of the company. Strategic initiatives. I was being demoted to the position of Tyler's analytical assistant, utilizing my data analysis skills to support his strategic initiatives. The message was clear. I was valuable enough to complete the work, but not valuable enough to get credit for it. That evening, I sent my application to Sunville Studios, along with a portfolio that included thorough documentation of every project I had worked on at Gravora Group. I was cautious to include only work that was unquestionably mine, but the portfolio amply displayed the breadth of my analytical and strategic thinking skills. 2 days later, on a Thursday morning, I received a call from Sunil Studios, asking for an interview. Director Margaret Foster, head of merchandising strategy for the fastest-growing retail chain in the Southeast, was reviewing quarterly sales reports in my cubicle. Her voice was professional but friendly as she explained that my application had caught their attention and that your portfolio exemplifies the kind of creative thinking they're looking for. She asked if I would be available for an interview next. Tyler was holding court in the break room this week, telling a group of co-workers about his strategic breakthrough and his plans to change our merchandising approach. The irony was painful, because he was actually explaining my work to people who had watched me develop it over months. I said, keeping my voice low, I would be very interested, and we set up the interview for when it would be convenient. Sunville Studios had been on my radar for months as a company that was upending traditional retail with data-driven strategies and innovative customer experiences. Their corporate culture emphasized analytical thinking and rewarded employees who could Back up creative ideas with solid research, which is exactly the kind of environment where my skills would be put to use. On Tuesday, I hung up, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. I studied Sunil's recent expansion strategies, examined their competitive landscape, and developed initial insights about their market positioning. I even created a sample merchandising plan that was customized to their brand identity to show how my analytical approach could spur growth. I prepared for the interview over the weekend with the same painstaking attention to detail that I brought to my merchandising analysis. The interview was conducted in their target demographics at Sunville's regional headquarters, a contemporary glass building that felt very different from the antiquated corporate complex of Grava Group. Director Foster greeted me in the lobby, and I was immediately impressed by her intelligence and directness. In contrast to meetings at Grava Group, where presentations frequently turned into political scheming, our discussion was solely about strategy data, and Director Foster mentioned looking over my portfolio, and I'm especially interested in your consumer segmentation methodology, because it shows you understand not only what customers are purchasing, but also why they're doing so. I took her through my process, explaining how I used behavioral analytics and traditional demographic data to create comprehensive customer profiles. And as I spoke, I could see her. I explained that this type of analysis resulted in a 20% increase in regional sales at Gravora Group because she showed genuine engagement with the concepts by asking follow-up questions that showed she understood the complexity of what I was describing. However, I think the methodology could be even more effective with a company that is willing to move quickly on insights. Director Foster smiled, which is exactly what we need as we're expanding. From day one, the discussion went on for almost 2 hours, covering everything from inventory optimization to seasonal forecasting. By the end, I knew this was where I belonged. Director Foster wrapped up the meeting by outlining their compensation package, which included a base salary of $25,000. We need someone who can create merchandising strategies that will give us a competitive advantage as we expand into 3 new markets over the next 6 months. As we shook hands, Simone said, "We've been watching Gravora Group's recent performance, and we're impressed by the strategic initiatives coming out of their merchandising department. We want that kind of thinking on our team." As I drove back to Birmingham, I considered the irony of her comment. Higher than my current position at Gravora Group, plus performance bonuses tied directly to measurable results, Simone said. Because of the work that Tyler was now taking credit for at Gravora Group, Sunil Studios was interested in hiring me. They had been tracking the industry impact of strategies I had developed and wanted to bring that expertise in-house. The idea of Tyler unintentionally helping me land a better job made me smile for the first time in weeks. 3 days after my interview, Director Foster called with an offer that exceeded my expectations. "We're prepared to offer you the position immediately," the director said. The role was a senior strategic analyst with a direct reporting line to the executive team and responsibility for merchandising strategy across all Sunville Studios locations. The salary was $30,000 higher than my current position, and the benefits package included stock options that could prove extremely valuable as the company continued its rapid expansion. "When would you be able to start?" Foster asked. I asked for the weekend to think about the offer, but I was already certain that this was my chance to leave the toxic atmosphere at Gravora Group and join a company that would appreciate my contributions. More importantly, though, it was an opportunity to demonstrate that my success wasn't a coincidence or the product of luck, but rather the result of true strategic planning. I gave Director Hamilton my letter of resignation on Monday morning, and his response was exactly what I had anticipated. Surprise, attempts to persuade me to stay, and barely disguised annoyance when I refused to change my mind. "I hope you realize you're making a mistake," he said, leaning back in his chair with a dismissive expression. "Sville Studios is still. I appreciate your concern, but I wanted to maintain professional composure while pointing out that my stable position had become untenable the moment he promoted Tyler for stealing my work. I believe this opportunity aligns better with my career goals. Unproven in this market, you're leaving a stable position for an uncertain future." Tyler's response was more nuanced. He made multiple attempts to meet with me prior to my departure, ostensibly to discuss transition planning, but obviously hoping to extract more ideas he could use after I left. I hate to see you go, he said during one of these conversations. We made such a great team, are you sure? He actually seemed anxious when he heard about my departure, possibly realizing that he would now be expected to generate original strategic insights without my research to rely on. The audacity of his statement was astounding, and we had never worked as a team. I had been his unintentional research assistant while he positioned himself to claim credit for my work. But I just grinned and steered the conversation toward practical transition issues. My final 2 weeks at Gravora Group were eye-opening in unexpected ways, and I am grateful that I was able to provide analytical support for Tyler's limitations. In my last week, I received an unexpected visit from Bethany Coleman, one of the senior analysts who had always supported my work. She closed my cubicle and asked pointed questions about Tyler's methods, and it became clear to anyone listening that his follow-up presentations lacked the depth and insight that had defined the holiday merchandising strategy. Her words were affirmative, but they also brought attention to a bigger issue at Gravora Group. She said, I want you to know that some of us saw what really happened with that presentation. Tyler has been trying to replicate your analysis methods for his new projects, but he clearly doesn't understand the underlying principles. It's becoming obvious that he didn't develop that strategy himself. My departure wasn't just about getting out of a bad situation. It was about refusing to support a system that rewarded theft over talent. On my last day, I cleaned out my desk while Tyler watched from his office, likely wondering if I would leave. The company culture allowed people like Tyler to succeed through appropriation rather than innovation, while systematically undervaluing the contributions of people like me. Behind any research he could use for future presentations, my first month at Sunville Studios surpassed all of my expectations because the company culture was collaborative, data-driven, and results-driven, just as Director Foster had promised. I was also given immediate access to the resources I needed to create comprehensive merchandising strategies, and my suggestions were put into practice. In just 3 weeks, instead of having to endure endless committee reviews, I had finished a thorough analysis of Sunville's expansion prospects and pinpointed a number of important markets where we could obtain a substantial competitive edge. My investigation also showed that our main rivals, such as Gravora Group, were using antiquated merchandising models that did not take into consideration shifting consumer preferences and demographic changes. The most intriguing finding was that, in spite of Tyler's promotion and alleged strategic leadership, Gravora Group's recent performance in markets where Sunville Studios was thinking about expanding showed declining sales in 2 of their 3 most important regions. Additionally, the holiday merchandising strategy, which had been so successful under my direction, was not being implemented successfully, indicating that Tyler lacked the analytical abilities required to modify the strategy in response to shifting market conditions. Director Foster was especially interested in this analysis, and during our weekly strategy meetings, she frequently asked me for my opinions on the advantages and disadvantages of competitors. Her inquiries made it clear to me that Sunville Studios wasn't only looking to compete with well-established retailers, they were actively trying to disrupt the market. She stated during one of these meetings, "Do you think their recent strategic initiatives will improve their competitive position?" I carefully chose my words so as not to come across as vindictive while still offering an honest, professional assessment based on the data I've reviewed. The entire industry, through superior strategic thinking, your analysis suggests that Gravora Group is vulnerable in several key markets, she said. I neglected to mention that those strategies were based on my original research, but Tyler's poor execution was caused by his lack of understanding of the underlying principles. He had the surface-level presentation skills to impress, but the current approach lacks the analytical rigor required to maintain market share against more agile competitors. When my second month at Sunville Studios started, I was given the responsibility of leading a project that would have a big impact on both businesses. Director Foster asked me to create a comprehensive supplier partnership strategy that would give us competitive advantages in important product categories, but he lacked the deep analytical foundation needed to adjust strategies to changing market conditions. This project required extensive supplier research. During my research, I found that several of Gravora Group's most significant suppliers were growing dissatisfied with the company's erratic strategic direction and diminishing sales performance. One supplier, Bright Hollow Labs in particular, had been voicing concerns about their partnership with Gravora Group. Relationships, contract negotiations, and market positioning were precisely the type of complex analytical work I excelled at. Bright Hollow Labs produced upscale home goods and seasonal merchandise that accounted for almost 15% of Gravora Group's total inventory value. The company was actively looking for alternative retail partners for their premium product lines. If they were to lose this supplier, their product offerings would be severely limited, and they would have to look for other sources at possibly higher prices. More importantly, though, if AI spent several days creating a thorough proposal for partnering with Bright Hollow Labs that detailed how Sunil Studios' analytical approach to merchandising could maximize the value of their product lines, the proposal included detailed market analysis, consumer preference data, and projected sales figures that would give the competitor exclusive access to Bright Hollow's products, which would represent a significant competitive advantage, showed that we could successfully market and sell their products. The proposal was so strong that Director Foster gave me permission to contact Bright Hollow Labs directly to discuss a possible collaboration. The call to Bright Hollow Labs came on a Tuesday morning in March, precisely 2 quarters after I had left Gravora Group. I had spent weeks getting ready for this discussion and creating a proposal for a partnership that outlined Sunil Studios' growth trajectory and analytical capabilities. When I spoke with Patricia Weatherby, Director of Business Development, she responded enthusiastically, saying, "We've been watching Sunil Studios' expansion with great interest. Your growth metrics are impressive, and we're always looking for retail partners who understand the strategic value of premium merchandise." I also took her through our consumer analysis. The conversation naturally progressed from market analysis to partnership possibilities, as we explained how our demographic research had found significant opportunities in the home goods market that traditional retailers were missing. Within 30 minutes, we had set up an in-person meeting for the following week. What was especially satisfying about the conversation was Patricia's spontaneous commentary about their current retail partnerships, which she started without my prompting. Voicing dissatisfaction with Gravora Group's recent performance and strategic direction, saying that our collaboration with them has grown more difficult, she clarified that their sales performance across a number of product categories has been poor, and their merchandising choices appear to be out of step with market realities. We're worried that their strategic leadership is unaware of our clientele. I paid close attention, inquiring carefully about their particular concerns without directly criticizing my former employer. I highlighted how Sunville Studios' strategy deviated from conventional retail tactics by highlighting our data-driven decision-making and customer-focused merchandising. I also explained that the partnership we're imagining would be based on analytical insights rather than intuition, as we believe that understanding. As we talked about possible collaboration models, Patricia's excitement was clear. By the end of the call, she had promised to present our proposal to Bright Hollow's executive team and expressed optimism about moving forward quickly. As I hung up the phone, I realized that this conversation represented more than just a business opportunity for Sunil. Granular consumer behavior is crucial for optimizing the value of premium products like yours. The partnership agreement with Bright Hollow Labs was finalized 6 weeks later, and the announcement sent shockwaves through the retail industry. It was the beginning of Tyler's retaliation for stealing my work, and Director Hamilton's reckoning for prioritizing incompetence over excellence. The strategic thinking they had dismissed was about to cost them their most valuable supplier relationship, access to Bright Hollow's premium product lines. While Bright Hollow acquired a retail partner with advanced market analysis and strategic merchandising skills for Gravora Group, the loss was a devastating blow to their financial projections and inventory strategy. Bright Hollow's products had brought in millions of dollars a year, and replacing that inventory would require finding other suppliers. That I found out about Gravora Group's response from industry contacts and former co-workers who contacted me following the announcement. According to Bethany Coleman, who was still employed there, the executive team was in the business, but more importantly, losing exclusive access to well-known premium brands would make it difficult for the company to compete in the high-margin market segments that were becoming more and more important to retail profitability. Hamilton had apparently demanded a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding Bright Hollow's departure, and Tyler was put in crisis mode trying to figure out how they had lost such a crucial supplier relationship director. The irony was that Tyler was being asked to use analytical skills he had never actually used to solve a problem that his incompetence had helped create in order to come up with a plan to regain the partnership. It's becoming clear to everyone that Tyler doesn't understand the strategic principles he claims to have developed, since he keeps presenting these intricate plans to win back suppliers. But they're all surface-level presentations without any real analytical foundation. The entire situation is a disaster, as Bethany told me during a coffee meeting. Meanwhile, at Sunville Studios, the bright director Foster was so happy with the results that she approved my team's growth and increased my budget for supplier development initiatives. The success was professional, but the personal validation was even sweeter. Hollow Partnership was producing results right away. Our first quarter with their products exceeded projections by 18%, validating both our consumer analysis and our merchandising strategies. Every percentage point of growth was evidence that my strategic thinking and analytical techniques were sound. Tyler may have gotten credit for my work at Gravora Group, but the results showed who really understood retail merchandising strategy. As I thought back on how my career had changed over the previous 8 months, I realized that Tyler's betrayal had looking ahead. I knew that this was only the beginning of both my success at Sunville Studios and the difficulties facing Tyler and Director Hamilton at Gravora Group, who had chosen politics over success. Ultimately, his theft had forced me to leave a toxic environment and find a company that valued my contributions. His incompetence was now demonstrating in the most public way possible that he had never been capable of the strategic thinking he claimed to possess. Performance. And they were going to learn the real cost of that choice from the market. In the end, talent triumphed over theft, and strategic thinking had successfully defeated flimsy charm, precisely as it ought to be in any sector that rewards true proficiency.